I just invested $24,680 into a variety of different DeFi passive income streams expected to yield me around 20 to 30% annually. And the reason why I do say 20% is because it is a safer guess, and I do think that this portfolio will return over 30% annualized. Now, the goal here isn't to make a ton of money in passive income. The goal here is to increase exposure on assets that I'm personally bullish on. So for example, I'm pretty bullish on Ethereum. So I'm staking Ethereum, earning about 5 to 7% every single year. And while that 5 to 7% isn't a lot, it's allowing me to increase my exposure to Ethereum. Therefore, when the Ethereum price goes up, I'm going to make even more money. Now, this is what I like to consider my blue chip bag portfolio. This includes a variety of different blue chip strategies as well as a variety of semi blue chip strategies. So obviously the first one is just me simply staking Ethereum, and so far my return on staking Ethereum has been 7.74%, and that's just the yield. Obviously I made a lot more money. I'm up about $2,700 on price action alone, and I initially deposited about $8,500 here, and that's because I started staking Ethereum when the price of Ethereum was at about $1,200. So obviously I got in at a pretty good time. And I do want to mention strategies like staked Ethereum as well as staked Matic and just other blue chip assets that I'm holding. I can actually borrow against those strategies and then go and invest that borrow, maybe it's stable coins, into market neutral and delta neutral strategies. So as you can see, my current APY on Ethereum is about 7.74%. So say I go and I lend out my wrap staked Ethereum, earn 7.74% on it. I borrow USDC, maybe $6,000 worth, against my wrap staked Ethereum, paying a 3% interest rate. And then I go and I invest that $6,000 worth of USDC into a market neutral strategy, earning me 20% annually. So instead of just making 7.74% on my wrap staked Ethereum, I'm now making a total of 16.65% annually on my overall position. And that's because I'm maximizing my capital efficiency by borrowing against my wrap staked Ethereum. Now I have another position called Matic X, which is just simply staking Matic. I only have about $760 that I deposited here. However, since Matic hasn't seen the best price action over the past few weeks, I'm down about $72 worth of price action, which ultimately is causing my yield to be negative 8.05%, which obviously is not true. It's just a miscalculation because the overall position is down. I will say that I've only been in the Matic position for about 1 to 2 weeks, and I do plan on increasing my exposure here as the price of Matic continues to fall. Now let's talk about Jones DAO. Jones DAO is a position that obviously is going to carry the portfolio. So as said, the goal here is to allocate the majority of the money to those safe blue chip strategies, allocate some of the money to the semi-risky strategies that obviously are still relatively blue chip, and then barely any of the money into those risky blue chip strategies. And ultimately, this will allow us to average out a yield of around 20 to 30% annually, because keep in mind, staking Ethereum is not just going to earn us 20 to 30% annually. It will earn us about 5 to 10% annually. But since we're balancing out the portfolio with those high risk and those low risk strategies and those high yield and those low yield strategies, we are able to get that 20 to 30%. So before we go any further, make sure to drop a like and subscribe with notifications turned on so you don't miss any updates on this portfolio. But GMX is a decentralized perpetual exchange where you can short and long assets without having to go on a centralized exchange. They have a liquidity token called GLP. So when you stake GLP, you're basically providing liquidity for the GMX exchange. GLP is just backed by a variety of different blue chip assets like ETH, Bitcoin, and stablecoins. And I do want to mention that GLP does absorb traders' wins and get profit from traders' losses. So instead of just getting the standard 23.74% yield here from GLP, I'm actually leveraging up on it through a platform called Jones DAO, and that's currently doing about 42% annually. So as you can see, I made about $173 just from the price alone, and I've made about $200 from the yield that I've got so far on my initial deposit of $2,400. And I have the same exact position on a platform called TenderFi, which is currently yielding around 76% annually, and I initially deposited about $1,500 here. I've only made about $10 from price action, but I made about $56 from yield. And I will say Jones DAO is a lot simpler. All you got to do is deposit into the vault, whereas with TenderFi, you actually have to manually lend out your GLP, borrow against it, and then convert those assets into GLP and repeat the process. So obviously it's a little bit tedious, but I do have a video on the channel explaining that. Now before we go any further, if you're just getting started out in DeFi, building your portfolio, I have created a free starter guide for you guys, which is down below in the description. Next off, we have the same exact GLP position on a platform called Synthetix. I initially deposited about $1,000 here, and currently that's worth about $1,001. I've only made $1 from yield, so keep that in mind. It's currently showing about a 2.1% APY, which obviously is very inaccurate. The reason why it's showing such a low APY is because I've only been in this position for about a week and a half, and there is some slippage when you initially get into this position, which ultimately means you might deposit $1,000, but then you might have $990 when you start out. So once you recover that slippage, that's where you start to make a profit, and that's where the yield starts to come into play. Now, as you guys can probably tell by now, I'm pretty bullish on decentralized perpetual markets, especially GMX and Synthetix. Synthetix is a platform that brings real world assets onto the blockchain. So for example, that includes Euro, that includes INR, that includes a lot of other assets. This essentially allows people to trade stock and forex markets on the blockchain without having to go onto a centralized exchange or a centralized brokerage or anything like that. Synthetix is the backbone of this whole entire synthetic ecosystem. And with that being said, SNX token plays a big role in the Synthetix ecosystem. I'm currently holding SNX token, but I'm actually staking it. Now, Synthetix has a pretty weird way to actually stake your assets. You essentially have to put up your SNX as collateral, and then you borrow against it. And the more you borrow against your SNX, obviously the more you're staking, or the greater yield you're getting, I guess. This is a pretty complex platform, and the other thing that's weird is your debt is actually fluctuant. So you might take out about $100 in a loan, but that $100 might fluctuate down to $95 to the point where you only have to pay back $95. Or that could fluctuate all the way up to maybe, let's just say $110 to the point where you have to pay back more. Which is why it's important that you hedge your debt using a platform called D-Hedge. It basically just mirrors the debt, so that way you are pretty much not having to pay back more than you actually have. But so far I'm doing about 20% annually. I've been staking my Synthetix for about 2 weeks, and they do give out rewards every single week, so that's why this isn't the most up to date. I also have 2 Uniswap V3 positions. One of them is an Ethereum to USDC position. This is essentially just providing liquidity for Ethereum to USDC with the broader range, and it's currently doing about 35% every single year. As you can see, I'm currently down about like $200 in price, and I'm up about $70 in yield. And then another position that I added to this portfolio is either going to perform really bad or really good, and that's the GOM to USDC pool. GOM is essentially a reserve asset backed by a ton of decentralized assets. It's not a stable coin, but it's a range bound token, meaning it stays between a specific range. So my goal here is to obviously get some stable returns. It's currently doing about 21% annually, but obviously that is not good enough for the risk that I'm taking on. However, I will mention I did enter this position last night, so it's only been about 24 hours. So I do need more data to actually track to see how this will perform over the long term. Ideally, I do want it to be performing at least 50% every single year in order for this position to be worth it for the risk that I'm actually taking on. But overall, I deposited about $24,700, and I currently have about $27,500. So we made about $2,500 from price action and about $500 from the actual yield, which puts us at a $3,000 overall profit loss. And if you average out the portfolio at current numbers, it's expected to do around 21% every single year. But as I said, this is on the lower end, and I do think that this will be boosted up to around maybe 30% within the coming weeks. And then in this portfolio, I'm also holding about $10,000 worth of different assets that I'm bullish on for the long term. These aren't necessarily blue chip assets, they're just my long-term holds. And my goal here is to obviously borrow against these different assets and execute market neutral positions. So for example, in my wrap Bitcoin position, I'm not earning any money except when Bitcoin goes up and down. So what I can do is I could borrow against my wrap Bitcoin, and I could execute delta neutral strategies. So as you can see, assuming I borrow, let's just say $1,800 against my $4,400 of Bitcoin, I get a 20% market neutral yield. I'm coming out with about 7.3% annualized on my Bitcoin, which is absolutely better than the 0.4% you could get for lending it out. And of course, with that being said, it's better than nothing. And if you want to reduce your risk, you can honestly just borrow maybe 25% against your collateral and still get about 4% annually. Now, my plan is to do that with all the assets that I can actually borrow against, and the higher the risk the asset, the less I'm going to borrow against it, or at least the lower loan to value ratio I'm going to have. So for example, with Bitcoin, I might borrow 55% against my Bitcoin, whereas with LDO token, I'd probably borrow around 20% against LDO. And that's simply because LDO token is way more volatile than wrap Bitcoin. Now, this spreadsheet is going to be available in my free Discord server, which is down below in the description. Just head over to the market neutral income channel and it will be there. If you enjoyed today's video, make sure to drop a like, as well as subscribe with notifications turned on if you are excited to follow this journey. As always, I'm going to keep you guys up to date, and this is my personal positions. It's probably not going to work for you. You're going to want to do something different. So obviously do your own research before you go and throw money at any of these projects. I hope you enjoyed. Remember, I have a free starter guide down below in the description if you want to check that out, and I'll see you guys later. Peace out.